this under control and get on me for a while. And our moderator, publisher Phil Vega, the publisher of the Sierra Vista Herald, he would moderate tonight and go over the rules. So I asked Phil to come out.
Well, we'd like to welcome you all tonight. We have a few very simple ground rules that I hope everybody pays attention to. These ground rules were given to both candidates before the program in advance earlier in the week. And first of all, I would ask that you turn off your cell phones or put them on vibrate so we don't have cell phones going off in the middle of answers. We would also ask that you hold your comments, your applause after questions have been answered. Don't interrupt the candidates as they're answering the questions. There is no election signage allowed inside the room, which was also, we've had a few people try to get by with that.
Can they take off their shirts then? It's the same thing.
I really appreciate you becoming the moderator, but we will let you be escorted out if you continue such interruptions. You know, one of the things that I really appreciate from these two candidates is come to beautiful Sierra Vista and face a live audience. And, you know, they had an earlier debate in a studio in a very pristine, quiet environment with no audience interaction and no ability to interact with the electorate that they're going to be representing. So I personally appreciate both of these people being here tonight, and I hope that your civility will show your appreciation as well. Now, the other things that I wanted to go over is the form is going to go on this procedure. Each candidate gets the same question, and each candidate gets 2 minutes to respond. And then the one candidate who got the question first gets 1 minute of rebuttal time. So basically, I asked Mr. Barber, do you like dogs? He says yes. I asked Ms. McSally, do you like dogs? She says yes.
Although they'll run an ad that says I don't.
So then Mr. Barber says, no, I did see Ms. McSally with cats. Okay, so that's how it's going to go. So the timekeepers, as you mentioned, are right down in front. They're going to help keep the time for us, and they will signal a yellow card when you have 30 seconds remaining. And you will then get a white card when you are out of time, and you will get the wonderful dinging bell. We want to keep that within as best as we can. We'll let you finish out your sentence, but that's about it. Okay. The order of the questions and answers was determined ahead of time based on a coin flip. And the coin flip was won by Mr. Barber. And so what that means is he got to choose if Ms. McSally gets to go first or not. And in this case, that's what they chose. So Ms. McSally gets to make an opening statement of 2 minutes. So it's all yours. Thank you.
Thanks. Well, thanks, Phil, and thanks to the Sierra Vista Chamber, and thanks everybody for coming out tonight. What a great crowd. I really appreciate it. So I'm going to open up with a question. How many of you think the country is going in the right direction? In the right direction? I'll tell you, most people I talk to are concerned, and they think it's going in the wrong direction. And I stepped up and decided I was going to run for Congress without any political experience because I don't walk by a problem, and I'm frustrated with what's going on in Washington, D.C., and the failures are impacting us here in Southern Arizona more than ever. Our economy is suffering here. Small businesses are closing, and people are out of work. Our border is not secure. And we're less than 20 miles from the border, with people making life and death decisions on a daily basis. It's a public safety issue. Fort Huachuca is at risk, as well as Davis-Monthan, with missions being atrophied, potentially up to 2,700 jobs being cut, and maybe even more in the future. And we've got ISIS and Al-Qaeda metastasizing and threats that are growing all over the world. We need leadership more than ever, and thankfully we have an election every 2 years and we get to decide who we send to Washington to fight for us. I consider this a job interview, and just like any job interview, you come with your resume, your experience, your leadership, what you've done, and also your letters of reference. And in this case for Mr. Barber, it's also a performance evaluation. So we're going to have an opportunity tonight to talk about a lot of issues, a lot of important issues, difficult sometimes to answer in 2 minutes. But I ask you to tune out the slick ads that are on TV, listen in, and look at this freshly as a job interview. Who do you want moving forward to represent you, and who do you want to fight for you? I look forward to the discussion tonight. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Barber, you get 2 minutes for your opening statement.
Thank you, Phil. Thank you for moderating. This is a job you've done a few times, so I know you're going to be great tonight. And I want to thank the Sierra Vista Chamber for bringing us together. I'm glad we have such a large crowd. It's good to have a live audience. And we're going to be talking about a lot of issues tonight that I think will really illustrate the difference between the 2 candidates and will make the election choice pretty clear. It's always great to come to Sierra Vista. It's always great to come to Cochise County. I've been working in this community in one way or another since we left college, and I'm just thrilled to be back. I always love coming to this beautiful part of our state. My family and I have deep roots in this part of the world. In Southern Arizona, we have my wife, 47 years, is with us tonight, Nancy, in the front row, and my kids, my 2 daughters with their kids and their husbands, 5 grandkids. We are rooted in this community, in this part of the state. We care deeply about what happens here and what we can do about it. And in Congress, I said I would go there to be an independent voice, to carry the voice of Southern Arizona to Congress, to take our values there. And it's not easy because, as you know, there's a lot of dysfunction there, but I have found people who are willing to listen and willing to work with me on issues that are important to this community. I'm very proud of my record, and I will stand on it tonight because it's a record that reflects independence of thinking and independence of action. The National Journal, which is the most nonpartisan political journal in the country, has determined that I'm the 4th most independent member of Congress. I'm fighting here for veterans. I'm fighting here for Boca Chica. I'm fighting here for APCO. Let me talk about those briefly. We have over 1,000 veterans in this district that we serve, trying to make sure that they get the benefits that they so richly deserve when they come back. We also have Dean.
Thank you, Mr. Barber. The questions were developed and not shared with the candidates ahead of time. So the candidates are getting these questions right off fresh tonight. And the other thing is again, the reason for not applauding while the answer is being given is because you're interrupting their time to give a complete answer. And as Ms. McSally pointed out, 2 minutes is sometimes not a very long time to give an answer for some of these involved questions. So please hold your applause after each candidate gives their answers. Okay, the first question goes to you, and it goes like this. What is the single most important issue you would address immediately after taking office, and how would you go about addressing it?
Thanks, Bill. As I'm traveling throughout the district, the single most important issue is still the economy. In Tucson was just highlighted as the city in the country that's lost the most jobs since August 2009. But this economic stagnation is not just reserved for Tucson. Down here in Sierra Vista, we're hovering around an 8% unemployment rate. In 2013, we had a 61% drop in permits for new homes to be built. The revenue down from accommodations, which is the hotels, is down 25%. We've lost over 500 jobs here in Sierra Vista. And a lot of that is because the economy is hurting here, not just because of what's happening nationally, but because the federal government the uncertainty, what's happening in the defense spending in the Fort. So the first thing I'm going to do is fight to grow our economy. We have got to get people back to work. We've got to get small business to be able to grow again, get access to capital, get the federal government off their necks so they actually can take their ideas and bring them to market, and people can buy homes and buy cars and read the American dream. So I am going to champion small business. I'm going to champion, and I know we'll probably end up talking about it, the Fort, because this city is in existence primarily dependent on the Fort. So I'm going to champion making sure that this Fort stays as a national security treasure. I'm going to champion that we bring new businesses here to grow our economy, because we can't pay for our security or our defense or border security unless we have a strong economy. So because of the difference in our philosophies and because of Mr. Barber's record, I have the National Federation of Independent Business, who is behind me. The National Home Builders are behind me. The U.S. Chamber of Commerce behind me. The Associated Builders and Contractors, General Contractors, the Restaurant Association, everybody who cares about the economy has looked at his record and looked at my record and my philosophy, and they're behind me in this race. And so there's one person who is not just going to have words, but actions to champion economic growth.
Thank you. Mr. Barber, you get the same question. If you want me to repeat it, I can.
Yes, please.
Okay, what is the single most important issue you would address immediately after taking office, and how would you address it?
Well, I believe that the most important issue facing all of Southern Arizona, there are specific issues facing certain segments, is the economy and jobs. We obviously have a huge problem in our country. The recovery has not been fast enough. But since I went to Congress as a former small business owner with my wife for 22 years, I've taken the knowledge of small business, what it takes to operate, to make a profit, to keep the doors open. I've taken that to the Small Business Committee, where we have already passed legislation out of that committee to deregulate small businesses, to increase access to capital. Before we left to the recess, I voted for a jobs bill that went past the House. Hopefully it'll pass the Senate. But we also have to hold on to what we've got. We have to grow jobs, and we have to keep what we've got. And that's why I fought from day one to lead the charge to make sure that Fort Huachuca did not lose the personnel that were proposed. 2,700 positions? No way. We're going to fight to save the Fort, and we've already done some work on that. And then finally, I want to say, APCO is a very important part of this community. It's a power plant near Wilcox and Benson. It employs 252 people. In the audience tonight, we have a representative from APCO, Jeff Goldfather. I've worked with the plant to make sure that the one-size-fits-all mentality of the EPA does not prevail in Cochise County. We pushed back when they said they were going to make APCO increase its technology to reduce regional haze by spending $200 million. That's absurd. We pushed back, and now we have a win-win situation where we're going to spend a lot less money to get even better results, and we save 250 jobs in this great community. 250 high-paying jobs in a rural area is critical, and that's part of the fight. Keep what you got and grow what you can. And working with the University of Arizona, I've been working to bring laboratory innovations to market through Tech Launch Arizona. We are going to bring the Arizona economy back by keeping what we have and growing what we need to grow, and I'm determined to make that happen when I go back to Washington.
If we ask the question, are you better off than you were 3 years ago, the answer is definitely no. And I don't know about you, but the extreme agenda coming out of the Obama administration, Nancy Pelosi, who you voted for Speaker, and the EPA, in overreaching in our communities related to this regional haze, I don't consider a $30 million bill a win-win. A $30 million cost is what's happened because of the EPA, about particles that we can't even see and are not harmful to our health. And by the way, that compromise is up till 2017, but the new EPA rules will shut down that plant in 2020. This is the extreme radical agenda coming out of your party's administration, and the EPA will shut down that plant in 2020. Go do the research. I know you got a commercial coming out talking about how you're saving these jobs, but $30 million is too much for us to pay here when we're already hurting in southern Arizona. So I'm going to fight to roll the EPA back so we have $0 being spent because we're taking care of it ourselves.
Thank you. by serendipity, a follow-up question about the economy. What is, in your opinion, the biggest hurdle to the economic recovery in our district? And how are you going to tackle it? That goes to Mr. Barber.
Well, it's a number of things, Phil, not just one single thing. First of all, we have to invest more in our education system so we can produce the educated and skilled workforce that companies need to come to Arizona. They will come if we have the workers. And we have neglected education in this state. And my opponent, unfortunately, has said the federal government has no role to play in education. I disagree. $2.5 million in federal money that comes back to the state from the Department of Ed, that's important to advance education. But let me just go back for a moment to my opponent's comment about Pelosi. Love to talk about Pelosi. I don't take my advice from Nancy Pelosi. There's only one Nancy in my life that I take advice from, and that's she's sitting in front of me, Nancy Barber. You know, that kind of flood throwing is really out of line. I have voted against the leadership over and over and over again. Nancy Pelosi doesn't care too much for me. But back to the economy, what we need to do. We need to have public education better. We need to bring jobs into the high-tech arena. We already have a foundation with solar, with optics, with bioscience, and the University of Arizona. When I was in Israel last year, I worked with the high-tech companies to attract them to begin startups here in Arizona at the research park near the University of Arizona. And right now, we think there are going to be 11 new companies that could be coming here. There'll be another visit to Israel later this year. They're on their way to build their businesses here. We need to attract both local capital and capital from elsewhere. And that's how we're going to help grow this economy. Capital is the biggest problem getting in the way of the growth of small businesses. Small businesses represent 70% of the economy in this country. If we don't help them by taking away regulations, if we don't help them by giving them access to capital, we are not going to regrow this economy. And that's been my job and my role since I went to Congress and joined the Small Business Committee. As a former business owner, I know how to do this. Unfortunately, my opponent has no experience in business. She wouldn't necessarily know how to do it.
The question is you've both touched on the economy in the first answer, so this is a follow-up. What is the biggest hurdle to the economic recovery in this district, and what would you do to tackle it?
Well, I think the biggest hurdle is Washington, D.C., actually. So that includes Congress not doing its job, and that includes federal agencies that are actually on the backs of small businesses. So small businesses do create 7 to 10 jobs. And it's great that you're on that committee, Ron, but the organizations that represent small business have looked at your record and decided to get behind you. And so if you look, I had a small business roundtable when NFIB came down to endorse me a couple weeks ago, and members of the community sat around a table and talked to me about the problems that they're having related to the federal government. And there's overreach on every front. Whether it was Dodd-Frank, which is actually strangulating the housing industry, and people not being able to get access to capital and loans. I refinanced my own house on a VA loan last year, and the paperwork got like 5 times as more before. It's ridiculous. It's not helping. It's actually hurting the housing industry. Whether it's the Affordable Care Act, which is anything but affordable, and it's hurting businesses because they're laying people off and putting them as part-time workers, and it's not giving them the ability and the confidence to grow. Right now, Washington, D.C. isn't doing their job of passing a budget and 12 appropriations bills every year. Congress's basic job to do that. The last time they did that, I think, was about 18 years ago. And what they do is create uncertainty in the economy so that people don't know whether they should hire or grow, or even if they've got capital, whether they should invest it. So we've got to get Washington, D.C. back to work. If there's no budget and no appropriations bills, you shouldn't be getting your pay, Ron, you and your other fellow members.